Hi, podcast fans. This is Betty, and I am thrilled to be back for Season 8 of the Lighting Your Way podcast. In this episode, I talk with Peter Friedrichs from New Hampshire. Peter and his wife Irene were out for a Sunday drive in July when they were struck from behind by another car and pushed into oncoming traffic. Peter shares the highs and lows of their journey through the healthcare system and reminds us all that it's okay to ask for and accept help. Welcome back to Season 8 of the Lighting Your Way podcast. This season's going to be a special one, we hope. We are going to talk to actual clients and patients. Rather than have our nurses tell the stories, we're going to ask our patients and clients to come on and talk with me about their experience in the healthcare system. And today's episode is a client from New Hampshire, Peter Friedrichs, whose wife Irene and he were in an auto accident back in July. So, Peter, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks very much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to have you. Thank you. And I'm happy that we get to talk about your journey and Irene's journey. So tee up for us what happened back in July.
Well, when I say I'm happy to be here, I'm happy to be anywhere. And I used to think that people who said, I'm happy to be seen when you say it's good to see you, I thought those people were obnoxious, but I am happy to be seen because we were in a very bad car accident on July 21st. My wife Irene and I were out literally for a Sunday drive in our 1980 Fiat Spider convertible, beautiful summer day, and we were stopped on a 2-lane road that we were going to make a left-hand turn, and I stopped for oncoming traffic, and we got rear a distracted driver who saw us at the last minute, hit our right rear, and pushed us into oncoming traffic. And the whole front end of the car was torn off by the truck that was coming the other way. And the passenger side of the vehicle took the brunt of the accident. So Irene's injuries were much more substantial than mine. And I was taken by ambulance to a local hospital. She was airlifted 75 or 80 miles from where we were to UMass Memorial Hospital in Worcester, Massachusetts. And she was hospitalized for about 3 weeks, and she was in an inpatient rehab unit for 6 weeks after that. And wow. Fortunately now she's home, and we are grateful not only to be alive, but that she's healing very well.
Wow, what a harrowing story, Peter. Jeez, I mean, those little Fiats are tiny cars.
Yeah. Yep, but I found out that having looked at the wreck myself later on, I saw that there was a steel beam in the door, and I think that's what saved our lives, saved Irene's life in particular. But yeah, It was a matter of inches, and the first responders who helped us extract us from the car, I went to see them about a month after the accident, and they said, when we saw what it looked like, we did not think you'd be alive. So we are, as I say, very grateful for the miracle that we survived. And my injuries really amounted to a concussion and a small laceration on the back of my head. I was treated and released from the local hospital. And Irene had a concussion and laceration on the back of her head, but she also had fractures of her C6, or cervical spine, 2 lumbar vertebrae, 2 broken ribs, and a broken collarbone.
Oh my gosh!
But fortunately, it was all structural damage, as it were. There was no spinal cord involvement, no internal injuries. It really is a miracle that it wasn't worse.
Wow! What kind of car hit you? What was the car that was behind you?
So it was a minivan who hit us from behind and pushed us in front of a Ford F-350 pickup.
Oh God! Oh my God!
Yeah.
Well,
fortunately, no one else was hurt.
Wow! Just the two of you. Wow! Yikes.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. And so began your journey into the healthcare system. Prior to the accident, had you and Irene been utilizers of the healthcare system, or any
Nothing
need?
in any significant way. Nothing anywhere close to this, certainly. Irene has had a hip replacement done several years ago, but that's probably the most serious thing that we've had done medically, either of us. And so this was a new experience from a lot of different angles.
Well put, Peter. Well, we'll get to some of those angles, I hope, in this conversation. So,
Sure.
when she was airlifted down to UMass, you were local, I guess, so you had to get down there to UMass. So, tell me about those first couple days.
Oh, you're going to make me relive all this, huh, Betty?
Only the highlights. Only the highlights.
So I have to. I mean, there's so many things that happened positively in this experience. It's again just miraculous. It happened that, well, first of all, I didn't know where they had taken Irene for about 45 minutes, or whether she was even still alive, and that was just a harrowing time, as you can imagine. My younger daughter lives right close to us here, and I had called her from the ambulance to tell her about the accident. She came to see me at the local hospital. Finally, we found out from the state police where they had taken Irene, and it happened that my brother was in the vicinity of Worcester on that day, and I called him, and he actually got to the emergency room shortly after Irene was admitted, and was able to be there with her for the rest of the day. Wow. And then once my daughter recognized that I was stable and okay, I sent her and her husband off to Worcester, and my brother came back here and helped me when I was discharged, brought me home, and then the next day drove me back to Worcester.
Oh my God!
He was one of the many angels in this story.
Wow. Yeah, just the fact that does he live near Worcester normally?
No. My one of my sisters does, however, lives about half an hour from Worcester, from the hospital, and he was going to see her.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So fortunately, when Irene sort of woke up for a little while in the hospital, she saw my brother's face and heard my brother's voice, and that was a source of great comfort to her.
Oh, I bet. God. And so
because she didn't know what had happened to me.
Oh, right. And that's one of the things that, in terms of when folks ask me what's, one of the greatest challenges in healthcare, it's communication. Right. So they're concerned about her and saving her life. You're concerned about her, but nobody's talking to you. So it would have been because they probably didn't know at that point. So when you were, you got good care, or she got good care at UMass Worcester, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
When did you think that you needed guardian nurses, and what was that like? How did you find out about us?
So I had, as I said before, never been in this sort of circumstance, and I looking back on it now, I know that my concussion was I was in worse shape than I kind of let myself believe as I look back on it. But I've had this tremendous feeling of vulnerability, as you can imagine, having been through this accident and then being in the healthcare system for the first time. Right. And when I started feeling like I needed some help, some support, it was when they started talking about where Irene was going to be discharged to and what kind of facility and where that would be and what its quality was and all that. And honestly, what I didn't know, I felt very powerless, and because I didn't know what my rights were, or what Irene's rights were as a patient. I didn't know whether the hospital could say, you have to go to this particular place at this particular time, or whether we could get kicked out of the hospital if we refused the particular rehab facility. All those kinds of questions. I just had no understanding of what rights we had and whether we could extend her stay until the right place came along, that kind of thing. And as it turns out, a good friend of ours, Amy Garfinkel, is an occupational therapist, and she had the connection to Pat and guardian nurses, and so she hooked us up. And Joe McLaughlin, talk about an angel, talk about someone who just swooped in and relieved so much stress and was able to both not only directly advocate for us, but just to be someone who knows the system and knows how the system works was just such a tremendous relief to me.
Well, that, as I always say, it's when you enter the healthcare system, it's often because it's some sort of crisis, and there is no manual. And even if you had a manual, you'd be too busy to read it, and that's why we're here. So I appreciate the referral to us because I think, we're nurses and we do this all the time. And for someone like you to be vulnerable yourself and having recovered from the accident, not only the trauma of that, but also then to have your wife in an intensive care unit for a while is pretty scary. And you don't know what the healthcare system, what the rules are, right? Nobody knows what the rules are.
Right. And I mean, I consider myself a pretty intelligent person. I'm well educated. I practiced law for 20 years. But you're in a foreign country essentially once you're in that situation.
Right. Well, Peter, when you think back, I mean, I know that it's not that long ago, but what has been the most challenging, or what was the most challenging aspect of dealing with Irene's hospitalization?
I'll say, as you mentioned earlier, she got great care from the nursing staff at UMass, and I have no complaints about everybody from the chief nurse all the way to the people who cleaned her room just were fantastic. And so that wasn't the issue. The issue was more dealing with the social worker who seemed like every day we had a different caseworker, case manager, and there was no continuity. And the stress of will she be able to find a rehab that will accept her? That was the most challenging piece. Once we knew that she was physically stable and could go to some kind of rehab, it was a matter of, it took probably, 8 days, maybe somewhere in there, maybe a little more than a week, to actually find a facility that was reasonably close to where we live. And who offered the services that Irene needed and was willing to take her in. As I found out, the euphemism, we don't have any beds available, is something that covers a whole lot of ground, including we don't like to take patients who are victims of car accidents because we don't want to deal with the insurance companies.
Yes.
But so that was the most stressful thing, was really, was I going to have to drive an hour each way to see Irene every day kind of thing, or is it going to be someplace more reasonable? And what rights do I have to decline a facility that's willing to take her if it's not, doesn't meet our parameters?
Was that where Joe was helpful in helping you understand those things?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest relief that Joe was able to offer me was to say, look, they are not going to kick you out unless you turn down every option that's available, kind of thing. And so stand your ground and make sure it works for you. And once I knew that they weren't going to force an option on us, that relieved a lot of the stress of the situation. And then it was almost more of a waiting game.
Okay.
But again, the dealing with social workers who were, very, very kind-hearted and good-intentioned, but it was, we would deal with one person one day, then they'd be off the next day, and we were assigned somebody else, and it was difficult to feel like we had them working on our team, and Joe certainly was on our team.
Right. Or to know what the plan was, right? Because I think that's oftentimes frustrating for patients and families because they don't know what the plan is. And somebody comes into the room and says, okay, we're going to discharge your wife today. And then you're like, wait a minute, where to? Hold on. Yeah, we hear that sadly quite often. So is she she said she's home. So where she ended up going to a rehab, was that one of the places that you wanted to go? Was it close to you? Was it helpful?
It was close enough. It was about a half an hour drive each way from our house, and so that was definitely manageable. And as it turns out, it was absolutely the right place for her to be. They had tremendous staff, and she was very well cared for, and they did a great job for I guess it was about 6 weeks she was there.
And she got rehab every day, because sometimes I guess what patients and families don't know, because you don't have to know, is that the difference between a skilled level of care and a rehab level of care. Did she go to the 1 hour version or the 3 hour version?
She went to the 1 hour version. The more intensive rehab, they deemed that she was not a candidate for the more intensive, and they were right. I mean, there's no way, at least at the beginning, that she could have withstood 3 hours of PT every day.
Right.
So yeah, I think it was the right level of care.
And now that she's home, is she getting home care? Go ahead.
She is. But I just want to mention, Joe was very helpful too, from the perspective that he was looking at all the options that were being presented to us and helping us to evaluate them to match Irene's needs. So that was a big aspect of what he offered to us as well, so that we could see where would be a good fit and where might not be as good a fit. So that was really helpful. And now that Irene's home, yes, she's getting home health care through Beata, which I think is a national company with visiting nurses and PT and OT, and she just started all of that this week. They did the intake last week, but she started with PT today, actually.
How are her spirits?
Her spirits are great. She has been so positive throughout this whole journey. I've half joked with people to say it's better that she was the one who was injured than me, because I would not have been nearly such a good patient as she's been. There's never been a moment of woe is me. Her attitude the whole way through has just been amazing, and I really attribute her quick recovery in large part to that.
That is wonderful to hear. I think there is something to be said for attitude. Yeah. When you think about overall perspective, right? That somebody who's kind of woe is me or perhaps not participating in therapy may not get the same value as to for the therapy.
Right. I mean, if you're declining therapy because you don't feel like it, or you're upset about something, then you're just not going to bounce back as quickly. And honestly, she became friends with everybody on the staff at the rehab facility, and so she got a lot of good TLC.
Does she remember the accident?
No, neither of us remembers the accident. My last memory was glancing in the rearview mirror and seeing essentially the grill of the vehicle that was about to hit us, and then we were both unconscious for quite a while. My first recollection after the accident was when I was being extricated from the car, and Irene remembers waking up in the helicopter for a very brief moment, and then she really doesn't remember much until she was transferred from the emergency room to a bed in what they call, I think, orthopedic trauma care.
Okay. Wow. Did she or you? I mean, I know that. Yeah, absolutely, and that often happens. I think it's too painful to think about and to remember. Did she get any sort of therapy, emotional therapy, while she was hospitalized?
So in the hospital, they did have a psychologist who checked in on her a couple of times, asked her a bunch of questions, made herself available. But at that point, and still today even, Irene is really focused on her physical healing. That having been said, since I had virtually no injuries myself, I've been seeing a therapist a couple of times a week since soon after the accident.
Good for you. Are you driving? I guess that's probably necessary up near in New Hampshire.
Yeah, it is. I got behind the wheel within a couple of days of the accident, and I probably shouldn't have given my concussion, but I needed to be able to get to and from the hospital where Irene was, and it hasn't been traumatic to drive, but I am certainly hyper vigilant. We'll say that, and I am constantly checking my rearview mirror whenever I'm stopped in traffic to make a turn.
Right. I'm assuming the Fiat was totaled. What are you driving normally now?
So the Fiat was just we called it a pandemic puppy. We bought it during the pandemic when other people were buying dogs, and
that's
so
great.
this was just our frivolous little car. We have another car that we drive on a daily basis.
Okay. Good. I know my sister-in-law is an ER nurse, and forever she has driven a Volvo because she's I guess I don't know if it's a joke, but the ER crews always know that Volvos are safer because of that steel frame that they have. Much to your suggestion of the Fiat having the steel beam.
Our daughters have made us promise never to buy another little convertible, and they're threatening to buy us a Hummer. So they don't want us in anything quite so vulnerable.
Oh boy, here they come. Here's Peter and Irene in the Hummer. Peter, if you think back, like I know that you weren't an active participant in the healthcare system, but now has the accident changed your perspective on the system of health, not necessarily your health, but on the healthcare system?
So I think that it's made me. I've always had the feeling that our system here in the country is so driven by the insurance companies and what their supposed needs are. I feel that much more acutely now, having been through this. So much is a result of the way things are handled is a result of insurance. And Medicare is great, and we have a supplement plan with Medicare, and I'm glad we have it. Seeing the bills that are coming through now and seeing what they charge people who don't have insurance versus the negotiated rates through Medicare is, to me, almost criminal. But no, I think it really just gave me a real full immersion in that whole the vagaries of the system that are a result of the control of the insurance companies.
Yeah, sadly, it is still a for-profit system. It's not about the patients; it's about the insurance. And
and I guess the other thing I would say too, Betty, is that there are healers galore in this world, and people who are dedicating their lives to taking care of sick and injured people that we know they're there. We see the hospitals, but to actually be with them 24/7 and see what they do and what a difference they make in people's lives, that certainly has left an impression too.
Well, that's really wonderful of you to notice that, right? While you're watching, I'm sure all the comings and goings in Irene's room, to realize that. Thank you. Because we all go into healthcare because we want to help people. Usually, it's not because we want to make a lot of money. We're there because we care about people. So, Peter, when you think back,
sure.
And I know you're not through it all, but what advice or suggestions would you give to someone else who's going through what you went through?
Don't be afraid to ask for help. I think is
Come on.
probably the biggest thing. I've always been one of those people who believes that he can kind of handle any situation. And this was a situation, as I say, it was a foreign country. I was a fish out of water completely. And if I hadn't happened to mention to our friend Amy what we were facing, and then she was able to call on her resources. There's so many people out there who are available to help. Don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't feel like you have to go it alone. Family, friends. I can't tell you how many people that have supported us in different ways throughout this whole thing and continue to do so. I started playing pickleball about 2 years ago when I retired, and we moved to New Hampshire not knowing anybody except our daughter and her family. And I started playing pickleball, and I had this community of 50 people who now are providing meals, and they're bringing flowers, and they send cards. And so, I mean, people are just there willing to help and want to help. And so don't be afraid to ask for help.
That is a wonderful message. And of course, kudos to the Pickleball League for helping you out.
Yeah, for sure.
Did Irene play before her accident? Was she a pickleballer?
No, she was a pickleball widow.
Ah. Oh, boy. Okay. Well, that remains to be seen once she's back on her 2 feet. We'll see.
Right.
But that's a great message. I do think so many people feel like they can do things alone, but the healthcare system will bring you to your knees when you least expect it. So I appreciate that you.
Yeah, and when you're least able to deal with it.
Right. Correct. Right. And it's a crisis. I mean, that's what we at Guardian Nurses, we often say it's a crisis. It's a 4-alarm fire, and people can't think quickly enough and don't know. Right. I mean, that's way back when I was with my Aunt Betty in the ICU. That was the reason I started the company. So I can appreciate your feelings about that. So thank you, Peter, for sharing the story, and all the best to Irene and to you. I look forward to updates on her recovery.
We'll keep you posted. I appreciate the time. Thank you very much, Betty.
All right, buddy. Thank you. Thank you for joining us this week. You can find the Lighting Your Way podcast on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and Stitcher. If you found our conversation helpful, please share it with your friends and leave us a review. You can learn all about how Guardian Nurses helps patients and their families when they need it most at our website, guardiannurses.com. So until next time, find some joy in your life and pet all the good doggies and kitties, and remember to tell your people that you love them.